morning, everybody. I'm Cindy Silva. I'm this year's mayor of Walnut Creek, and I'm delighted to welcome you this morning and to thank you for taking time as part of your busy Saturdays to come hear about the city and to hear what's going on. It's also great to know that so many members of the community are interested in what's happening. And after all, I like to say that I'm elected to take the time to know, but you aren't, so thank you. And since I don't have grandchildren, I do have to tell you that Walnut Creek is one of my favorite things to talk about, except for the latest episode of Downton Abbey. Before I begin, a couple of housekeeping details. First of all, the restrooms are in the lobby. Be mindful of your beverages. We are certainly happy that you have them, and we're delighted to offer them, but be careful, this is a theater. Today's presentation, we will be done promptly on or before 10:30 because this theater is full this afternoon with the San Francisco Chamber Orchestra. And the other theaters are full as well. So if you haven't checked out things in this theater before, or if you've never been to the Lesher Center, this is one of the greatest places that Walnut Creek has to offer. And also I would mention that I will be taking questions at the end of the session, but what we did was there were cards available in the lobby as you came in, and so hopefully you have a card. If you have a question, just write it down, and we have some volunteers today. You can kind of go like this and pass your cards in, and then we'll moderate the questions so that we can get through as many of them as possible. I would also like to introduce you to a few people who are with us here this morning. Luella Haskew and Justin Waddell, both new members of the City Council, are here in the front row. And we have some of our city commissioners who are here as well. From the Transportation Commission, I see Brian Kraselic. From the Park, Rec, and Open Space Commission, Sandy Jacobson and Tom Worthy. And Carol Fowler is here from our Arts Commission. And if I missed anyone else who's here from one of our commissions, I apologize, but now that I'm up here, your faces are not all that. Oh, David Crawford from Design Review. I saw him walk in at the very end. Thank you all for being here. And I'd also like to acknowledge Gail Vassar from our city staff. She's our communications and outreach manager, so she's responsible for helping us stay connected with all of you. In the back, we have Matt Bolander, who runs Walnut Creek TV, behind the monitor there. The Lesher Center staff, there are some people here today, including Scott Dennison, who's the general manager of the Lesher Center, and then also from our transportation staff, Samin Tamuri. And we also have volunteers. Our ushers today and helpers are graduates of our Citizens Institute. In case you haven't been through the program, it's a great way to learn more details about Walnut Creek. And they're volunteering to check people in, and they're also the volunteer ushers this morning. So thank you to all of them for what you're doing to help the Second Saturday Spotlight program. So I'm going to start with the very best news. Walnut Creek residents are overwhelmingly happy with living in Walnut Creek and our quality of life. In fact, we know this because we took a survey of more than 700 residents just about a year ago, and they gave us lots of details that are telling us this. In fact, what they told us was when we asked them, what do you think of the overall quality of life in Walnut Creek? 96% rated the overall quality of life as excellent or good. And when they were asked to rate Walnut Creek as a place to live, 97% said it was either excellent or good. When we asked you about our neighborhoods, 93% of us said that our neighborhoods were excellent or good. And when asked if we would recommend Walnut Creek as a place to live for others who might be interested, 97% of us said that we would, which I need to point out to you all, if you don't like traffic, stop telling your friends to move here. We also, of course, asked the community how they feel about Walnut Creek as a safe place to live. And 97% of us said that we feel safe or very safe in Walnut Creek. And of course, this last statistic is very important to us because having a safe community is really our top priority as a city. And going on to that, our most recent crime statistics really show that we are in fact achieving that objective. These are the 2005 to 2012 statistics for our major crime in Walnut Creek. And as you can see, the most important thing to see is the downward trend. And in fact, in 2012, we continue to be significantly lower than our major crime was in 2005. We had a slight uptick. It was about 2.5% from 2011 to 2012, but I will point out that 2009 and 2010 together saw a 27% drop in our major crimes. And we're also seeing a consistent drop in our what they call Part 2 or less serious crimes, and that in fact dropped between 2011 and 2012 about 5%. And I think you'll all agree with me that this really reflects the quality and professionalism and expertise of our police department. We often get asked, though, what is going on in the police department? What are some of the things that we're doing? And so I'll give you a few updates. Hopefully you all heard that the City Council last year approved the addition of 2 new officers to the police force, which will bring the total size of our police force to 78 sworn officers. And this is particularly important, we thought, as we see changes in our downtown, the growth in our population, which later I can answer a question about what pace that is, and also as we see the state go through what they have the word called realignment of the prison population, but you and I might call releasing them early. And so we do see an influx into the county of some early release nonviolent offenders. Some other things that we've done recently in the last year, anticipating some changes in the way downtown would work, not only with downtown businesses, but also the potential for new residents living more in the downtown area. The police department changed the structure of the department and actually added a downtown policing team. And this team isn't just worried about late night activity. It's also really working day in and day out with our downtown business owners and downtown property owners and downtown residents on issues related to downtown. At the same time, the department, wanting to ensure that all of our neighborhoods continue to be safe places for us, they restructured the department in a way that we now have 3 lieutenants who are specifically assigned to the 3 large regional neighborhoods or sectors, as we call them. And each of those lieutenants' job is to know exactly what's going on in your neighborhood and my neighborhood and what our specific needs are. The last year, the council also, hopefully you all know, we strengthened our local ordinances for alcohol serving establishments, better known as bars. And we strengthened those ordinances, and at the same time, with the police department started working more closely with those owners. And we think the result has been that we have seen a decline in the level of unacceptable late night activity. I'll say it that way. Communication is also a critical element in a police department. You must be able to communicate with your officers and with the officers and public safety members of other communities, because we are helping each other all the time. So 2 things: we've upgraded our dispatch system in recent months, and we are currently investing $2 million as a city to participate in a 2-county fully integrated, interoperable digital radio communication system. And the last of the radio sites is actually going up in Walnut Creek on a BART tower right now, and that system will fully go live across the 2 counties by the middle of the year. And this will make it possible that all public safety agencies, fire, police, BART, East Bay Parks, will be able to communicate with each other when they turn on their radios. So I want you to think about South Broadway. I think it was the fall of 2004, and a pipeline exploded. And it was right behind Los Lomas. I'm sure many of you were here. What happened that day was we needed to call on mutual aid from communities across the region. And when I came around onto Red Gear, trying to get onto through there, the actual traffic was being controlled in the middle of that incident by a San Ramon police officer. What we all didn't know is that in order for the San Ramon police officer to figure out what was going on all of 300 yards north on South Broadway, he had to talk to his dispatcher in San Ramon, who in turn talked to Walnut Creek's dispatcher, who in turn had to talk to someone on the scene. With a fully interoperable digital system that we're about to go live, that will no longer be required, and that San Ramon officer would be able to talk directly to the Walnut Creek officer. And finally, I will say that we have trained more than 1,400 members of our community to participate in the Community Emergency Response Training Program. It involves 20 hours of their time to go through this training. Many of you here have been through it. Thank you. But these will be the people that you and I will be relying on in our neighborhoods in the event of that major catastrophe when it occurs, because no community has enough public safety personnel between fire and police to be able to address the issues that are going to happen when the large earthquake hits one of our communities. So thank you to all of you who are participating in that program, and do watch the Nutshell to find out when the next training is. By the way, Gail, my husband, asked when is the next training. So Bernie, in the back of the room, you're doing a good job. Hang in there, keep bugging him. As I mentioned at the beginning, Walnut Creek residents really give the community extraordinarily high marks as a place to live. And this is because Walnut Creek is more than a bedroom community where we all get up in the morning, go to work, come home, go to bed. We're a community that has a long history of paying attention to more than the basics. And for me, it's this attention to the cultural, educational, social, artistic, and recreational aspects of life that has really elevated our community far and above so many others that we may know. And I'm going to start by just saying, let's talk for a minute about our two libraries. Our libraries are among the most important services in this community, and we know that because 78% of you use our libraries. And our libraries are in fact the most used in Contra Costa County. Our downtown library sees 1,500 visitors each day. And when you add the visitors together between the downtown library and the Ignacio Valley Library, it comes to about 375,000 visits each year. And I like to tell a story. About 2 months ago, on a Friday evening, the National Touring Exhibit of Lincoln, the Constitution, and the Civil War came to the downtown library. It was a coup. It was one of 200 stops in this country for that exhibit. And on the night that it opened, a Friday night, more than 700 people came to the opening. And over the course of the last 8 weeks, every program that has been offered related to that exhibit has been oversold, standing room only crowds, and the fire department has made them turn people away because they can't let more than the required number or the maximum allowed into the room. So it's things like that that tell us our libraries are incredibly important to us. Now, of a significant note, in 2002, our local voters approved a $22 a year parcel tax that funded additional consistent library hours for both of our libraries. Now, there was a sunset on that measure. It was called Measure Q, and the funds collected for this purpose are due to run out within the next year or so. So I do want to assure you that given the importance of our libraries, the issue of how to fund consistent library hours is on the City Council's radar. The arts. We're sitting in the Lesher Center. But we've said it before, and the proof is again here, that investing in the arts and culture is not only important because the arts inspire us and unite us, but for Walnut Creek, investing in the arts and culture yields a direct and significant economic benefit. And how do we know this? Well, Walnut Creek, again, this past year participated in the National Arts and Economic Prosperity Study, which is conducted by the Americans for the Arts. And the survey results showed that the arts are a $32.5 million industry in Walnut Creek, and that's over and above the price of the tickets. The arts support 865 equivalent full-time jobs in Walnut Creek and generate $2.8 million in local and state tax revenue. And of course, at the center of the arts in Walnut Creek is this Lesher Center for the Arts. Now in its 23rd year, this regional center hosted 850 events last year and sold over 200,000 tickets, including the tickets to its resident program center repertory company, the theater company that most frequently performs in this theater, and the Bedford Gallery, which is down on the first floor. Last year saw the inauguration of jazz at the Lesher, and I don't know if any of you were able to attend it, but that is a 4-concert summer jazz series that was sold out last summer. It will be returning again this summer in August. I think a few seats might be available, so check it out, check the box office. The Lesher Center also hosts a number of intriguing art exhibits or art shows each year down in the Bedford Gallery. The current show is by Stephen Joseph, which most of us probably know Stephen as having done the most recent Mount Diablo book. But he has a show downstairs right now called Broadway Revisited, and he has filmed and taken photos and stitched them together of everything that's related to the backstage and how you put theater together. And that show is open through the 17th, which I think is next Sunday. And finally, the Lesher Center is the home to the acclaimed Arts Access Program, which is funded by the Diablo Regional Arts Association and actually brings 6,000 underprivileged children into this theater for a theater performance, probably the first they have ever seen each year. And I want you to consider this. For every ticket sold at the Lesher Center, it generates $23.75 of additional spending in downtown Walnut Creek. That's over and above the ticket price. The Lesher Center and the two resident programs, Center Rep and Bedford Gallery, recover 90% of their budgeted costs. And more than 30% of the attendees, people who come to the Lesher Center, actually come from outside of Contra Costa County. So think of this as a tourist magnet. Disneyland. But from my perspective, something like the Lesher Center is really only successful if we are also, as a community, working to ensure that arts and culture are accessible to all of us, to every member of the community. And our city's civic arts education program is one of the ways that we do that. It continues to be the largest community-based civic arts education program in Northern California. In fact, last year it served 7,000 students ranging in ages from 2 to 92. But it's not just the size of the program that's important to note, it's the quality as well. So in 2012, the Civic Arts Education Ballet program was featured center stage in a full-length, award-winning documentary called First Position, and that documentary was shown at Sundance. And the music department from Civic Arts Education has recently been selected as an East Bay Assessment Center for the achievement programs of Carnegie Hall and the Royal Conservatory of Music. And I do want to point out that this is the cover of the Arts and Recreation catalog. Hopefully you are all receiving it at home. Last year we merged the two, the arts catalog with the recreation catalog, and the result is that more of us are getting the offerings from both sides of the house. And registrations for our Civic Arts Education program went up 14%, just as the result, they believe, of the change in the way that we're marketing our programs. We also want arts and culture to be available to all of us literally on the street, and for over 30 years the city has been committed to our public art program. This past year, in partnership with Walnut Creek Downtown, which was formerly the Walnut Creek Downtown Business Association, and in partnership with Wells Fargo Bank and Mechanics Bank, we updated 2 fountains on North Main Street and added 2 new pieces of public art. The fountainhead is in front of Mechanics Bank, and its purpose is to address, or its message is to address, the idea of water as the source of life. And Geologica, which is in front of Wells Fargo Bank, is intended to inspire us by tracing water to its elemental source in the earth. Now, some of you may also remember the Hand of Peace, which is an iconic piece by the very famous artist Beniamino Buffano. So, for about 40 years, the Hand of Peace stood in Quail Court. Then in 2009, Westlake Realty, which owns Quail Court, took it down in order to refurbish it. And we continue to be in discussions and contract negotiations with Westlake Realty to bring the Hand of Peace back to Walnut Creek, but not to put it in Quail Court. We want to bring it back and place it in Civic Park, just north of the library. Maybe this year. And also I want to let you know that each of the multifamily housing projects that are proposed to come into Walnut Creek does have a public art requirement. In fact, the other illustration up here is the proposed and public art for the new apartments that are going up in the old Long's headquarters site at Civic Drive. And this is a totemic piece that will in fact be directly on Civic Drive at the north end of that project. So it will actually be not only available to the residents of the project, but all of us will see it whenever we're on Civic Drive. Our open spaces and recreation programs continue to be a strong part of our quality of life, and they see significant usage. In fact, last year, 94% of us said we visited a city park. And of course, our open spaces, which we first bought into in the early 1970s, mid-1970s, continue to be our pride and joy. Some other factoids. Our aquatics facilities had some 325,000 swims in 2012, including the swims of 2 young women who went to the 2012 Olympics in London. Our summer camps had over 1,100 children enrolled in them, and our senior programs, I'm going to go to the spectrum of age here, our senior programs have 2,200 members in the senior clubs, and last year all of the events they had 11,400 participants. And then there's our ball fields and our gymnasiums. Last year alone, there were 38,000 hours of scheduled reserved use in the ball fields and gymnasiums. And that wasn't one person each hour. So when you consider that soccer teams have 20 to 24 to 26 to 30 kids on a field in an hour, and you do the math, I figured that's over 1 million person hours on our ball fields and gyms just last year alone. I will say that our biggest challenge related to our community facilities and our recreational facilities is the age of this infrastructure. A good portion of these facilities were built in the late 1960s and into the mid-1970s when Walnut Creek was growing very rapidly. And that includes things like the Lorkey Swim Center and the Clark Swim Center, Heather Farm Park and the community facilities there, Civic Park and its community facilities, and the Senior Center, the Boundary Oak Golf Course. And if we look at all of that, the real question is, things do age, they do wear out, and also many of these facilities do not meet today's standards for seismic issues, for accessibility, and so they are on the path of needing to be replaced and not just maintained any longer. With this in mind, we have 4 projects on our recreation facility to-do list in the couple of years here, and you want to keep an eye on. We are looking at upgrading all 10 of our playground facilities in the community, and that's from a safety standard for our children. We're also looking at adding an all abilities playground. I believe Heather Farm is the targeted location for that. We're looking at the potential of an all-weather turf ball field at the back of Heather Farm. Those 2 fields at the back were originally built and opened in the early 1970s. So they have been constructed, well, just think how your lawn was constructed in the early 1970s and how many times you've probably had to replace your lawn since then. We're looking at a permanent location in Civic Park for the ice rink. The ice rink gets 35,000 to 40,000 skates each winter. But what it does also do, besides being very popular for our community, it does do some 3-month damage to the park when it comes offline, which is what that photo is. It shows what it's going to take to bring it back into shape. So we're looking at a permanent location for the ice rink. And finally, we're looking at updates to the 43-year-old clubhouse at Boundary Oak Golf Course. Now, I also want to assure you that any of these projects and all of these projects will be funded with dedicated park funds or funds from the dedicated golf course fund, and they will not be paid for out of the general fund. And I'm happy to answer questions on what that means later on. So speaking of green, we adopted our first climate action plan this past year, and there are a few achievements probably to note at this point. 5 of our city businesses are actually considered green businesses. I'll say city operations are green businesses. The solar panels we installed last year on City Hall are helping to reduce our electricity costs. And for those of you who are interested in solar, we have streamlined the permitting process for solar projects. Boundary Oak Golf Course is not only a great place to play, but evidently it's a great place to nest, because the Audubon Society gave us an award of excellence for the course this past year. As part of our urban forestry program, we are inventorying our city-owned trees, and at last count, we have 11,703. And the picture in the lower left corner, last summer we installed 2 biohaven floating islands in the cement pond at Heather Farm Park. Now this is constructed with recycled plastic bottles, and then the plants are placed in the top and the roots grow out the bottom, and what that does, it draws pollutants from the water into the root structure, so it improves the water conditions and the habitat for wildlife and fish. This has been used by the Army Corps of Engineers in other environments such as this successfully in the past. And when the fencing comes down, because it is mature enough, it actually creates a much more natural looking environment for that cement pond at Heather Farm. We adopted our first bicycle master plan this past year, which puts us in the position of being able to successfully compete for grant funding for improvements to trails and roadways related to bicycling. As a first step this past summer, we actually invested in putting sharrows on our streets. That's California Boulevard. We painted those on 2.5 miles of city streets, which does let us know as drivers that we should expect bicyclists on the right side of the road. And for those of us when we're riding our bikes, it lets us know that the drivers should be paying more attention to us. We also completed 4 bicycle-specific projects or related projects this past year, including improving some trail crossings in the community. The one in the photo here is the Iron Horse Trail crossing at Mount Diablo Boulevard behind Safeway. And if any of you know that intersection, it was particularly tricky for pedestrians and bicyclists. And now we've narrowed it down and we've put in the traffic signaling, so to speak, so that the drivers know better that there might be pedestrians or bicyclists in the path. Then there's our water and our waterways. We are, after all, named Walnut Creek. After more than 10 years of work and with the cooperation in conjunction with some of our neighboring cities and other groups, we have formed the Walnut Creek Watershed Council that's in purpose is to support a healthy and sustainable Walnut Creek watershed. Our watershed for Walnut Creek actually is the largest in the county, and it encompasses 93,500 acres. And think about it, you've got Las Trampas Creek and Tice Creek and San Ramon Creek and all sorts of other creeks that are feeding into it. So that water is coming from many other places. And what we really want to do is work together to ensure that the runoff from our roadways and our storm drains, which does end up in Walnut Creek coming from all those other directions, is as clean as possible for the habitat, the water, and the wildlife. And one of the things you want to think about is that 38% of the litter on our roadways is actually tobacco related. Cigarette butts, cigarette wrappers, cigarette packages. And if we don't pay attention, that all just ends up as runoff into our storm drains and ultimately into our waterways. And so we're starting a major campaign this spring. It's an anti-tobacco litter campaign in order to remind people of what happens when you don't pay attention to your tobacco litter. Now, Gail Vassar has a great joke for this one. It's put your butts where they belong. And I've now said that on camera. We also have 2 health and environmental issues on the City Council's 2-year work program. The first is we want to strengthen our smoking ordinances to encompass secondhand smoke. And we will be discussing the scope of that at our Tuesday, February 19th City Council meeting if you are interested in that issue. We're also looking at the issue of plastic bags, what they do to our landfills and what they do to our waterways. You know, when you put a plastic bag in your trash and Allied Waste comes along the street and is tipping your trash container into its truck, those lightweight plastic bags float. And they float down into your gutter, and then they get into our storm drains, and then they get into the waterways, and then they get into the bay, and then they get wrapped up, the fish and the birds get wrapped up into it. In fact, it's a major source of litter problems. And the challenge is that we can, as a city, simply say ban single-use plastic bags, but it will be more effective if we do it at a regional level, or at a countywide level, or at a state level. So there's a lot of reconnoitering going on as to how best to do that. And I will also tell you that just about every individual city in this state that has adopted a single-use plastic bag ban has been sued over environmental reasons, because after all, because they were challenged, those cities had not done a full environmental review on the impact of whether changing from plastic and paper was going to in fact affect industry, et cetera. The source of that challenge was the plastic bag industry. So we are talking trash, so let's talk trash for a minute. The city is responsible for trash collection and waste reduction, but for the past 15 years, we've been doing that as part of a partnership at a regional level. It's called the Central Contra Costa Solid Waste Authority. It's a partnership of 6 communities, the 3 in La Marinda, Danville, Walnut Creek, and the parts of county that are right around that. And what this has done is it's allowed us to operate so much more efficiently than doing it at the individual municipality level, that over the last 15 years, and as of today, I'll say it this way, as of today, your garbage rates are lower than they were 15 years ago when we started the partnership. So it's allowed us to be much more efficient. The partnership has also given us the means to be very creative in looking for ways to reduce trash and increase our recycling. So we have the home composting workshops, and we work with schools on food waste and recycling. We give residents food scrap pails so we can recycle our food waste with our yard waste. We offer recycling of things like sharps and pharmaceuticals and batteries. And the result is that we as residents are now recycling 60% of our trash. But the state requires that we get to 75% by 2020. And we know that we as individuals will be able to do that, but the other challenge is to getting the commercial businesses to do it, because they have much more challenges going on in their places of business, employees that have to be trained, and actually the locations of all that trash. One of the ways that we're working with the commercial enterprises, and it's very creative, is that we are involving local restaurants in a program with their food waste, and we're converting it to energy. And this is being done in partnership with East Bay Municipal Utility District and Allied Waste. And what we're doing in this program is Allied Waste collects the food scraps from the local restaurants, grinds them, and then transports them to East Bay Mud's water treatment facility in Oakland. And then East Bay Mud takes the ground scraps and anaerobically digests them and converts those scraps to methane gas, which it then converts to electricity to power the water treatment facility, and then it sells back the excess electricity to PG&E. And the program is open to restaurants, grocery stores, and institutional food generators. And we currently have 245 participating businesses out of about 350 in the 6 areas in the Contra Costa Solid Waste Authority. And most of those are in fact in Walnut Creek, as you well know. Which brings me to our local economy. That's another form of green. Our local economy is really a key element of our quality of life in Walnut Creek. Think about it. A strong local economy means strong local jobs, high quality jobs, good paying jobs. And a strong local economy means that our local business owners and operators can be successful. And without a doubt, Walnut Creek is the business center for the region. And I'm happy to report that we have seen strong signs of economic recovery this past year. So let's start with the retail sector. It isn't our largest sector, but is the sector that you and I see every day, so it's probably the one we think about the most. From our downtown to our neighborhood shopping centers, empty storefronts are filling this last year, which is important for our local business owners and all of us. And in fact, across the city, the vacancy rate is the inverse of this. The vacancy rate is now down to 4%, which is about half what it was as recently as mid-2010, so about 3 years ago. And as a city, I also want to report that we're taking some very strategic steps to help strengthen the local retail economy. And one of our primary strategies is to support the traditional downtown, and by that I mean the small businesses and restaurants that are north of Mount Diablo Boulevard, to support them and to find ways to help draw those visitors to Broadway Plaza across Mount Diablo and north and west into the traditional downtown so that they can patronize those businesses as well. And how are we doing this? Well, you probably know this small parking lot that's at the corner of North Main and Mount Diablo Boulevard. In fact, some of you might even remember that that small parking lot was at one time a Standard Oil gas station. Now last year, the City Council approved the sale of that small parcel to Brian Hirahara, who is a local resident and developer. And Brian's plans are a two-story building at that corner. The corner part of it would be a retail store, and the back would be a three-story restaurant with rooftop dining. So you can imagine being able to go up on the roof to dine and being able to see, except for the Nordstrom parapet, you can see some of Mount Diablo, and you can also see west and south from there as well. And Brian's plans received very positive comments from the Design Review Commission on Wednesday evening. We're also looking at other small things that we're doing to help downtown and across the city. A new wayfinding system is in the works that will make it easier for drivers and pedestrians to find key locations and amenities. Now, this is intended to cover all of downtown, but I also like to think that it's going to help everybody who goes downtown not only find Broadway Plaza or this building, the Lesher Center, but also find our libraries and our public parking garages, which, speaking of parking, the last of the old-style crank mechanical meters are gone from downtown, and they've all been replaced with new electronic meters that take both coins and credit cards. And take out your smartphones, because we are testing on Locust Street a wireless application that will allow you to add money to your meter remotely using your smartphone. Do I need to add parking? And soon we'll be adding sensors beneath the asphalt on each of these parking spaces so we can tell in real time what the occupancy is, and eventually be able to tell you where to find an open parking space without driving around and around and around. In the coming months, you may see the white spaces on our public parking garages turn into something a little more interesting and actually focused on economic development, which is we'll be allowing local retailers to advertise on the walls of our parking garages. And in case you just hate looking for a parking space downtown, I suggest you use the parking lot and either walk and park once and walk, or take the free downtown trolley. To activate the corner of Broadway and Mount Diablo, we have installed and we're leasing 6 pop-up kiosks at Liberty Bell Plaza. You may have seen them. They are home to some unique specialty realtors. The most recent to come online sells logo wear, and I think they did a pretty brisk business the last 2 weekends for 49er wear. Our downtown businesses are also getting in on the act, and you may see flower pots and plantings along the streetscape, as well as new types of signage that are pretty unique, like the Broadway Eyeworks or the Red Box Fine Accessories. They're also called blade signs, and those are being done by the businesses themselves. Now, I didn't want to lead with this, but yes, Neiman Marcus did open last March, and its opening gala, I do want to commend the store because its opening gala generated funds or was to benefit 4 local philanthropies, including the Diablo Regional Arts Association, which supports this center, and the Monument Crisis Center. And they generated some very nice profits or donations for those philanthropies. And people often ask me this question, well, how's the store doing? I don't know specifically, but the reports are that its sales are meeting its targets. And that's not me in that clothing. Broadway Plaza's owners are working on a proposal to update and expand the center. And in case you don't realize it, Broadway Plaza was first opened in 1951. So a lot of that building is over 60 years old. And the plans include some expansion of the retail, definitely more parking and better pedestrian environment. Last year we did the draft environmental review work for the proposed project. The owners are planning to bring back revised concepts to the City Council on February 19th, so in a week and a half. So if you're interested in that, come to, we're doing it as a study session at 5 o'clock at City Hall. Moving away from downtown, we're very pleased with the improvements that we're seeing in our neighborhood retail centers. Now, you might know this one. After more than 20 years, the co-op site up on Geary Road was finally redeveloped, and this past September, Geary Marketplace opened, anchored with a Sprouts Farmers Market. And at this time, all but one of the small ancillary spaces is tenanted. 2 Saturdays ago, we celebrated the opening of the 24-hour fitness, the new one, which is up on North Main in the location of the old cement batch plant. So the last of our industrial sites is gone. Now the funny thing is, the Chick-fil-A is also on the same site. So I do have these visions of go get a fast food chicken sandwich, eat it, and then go exercise it off. Or exercise really hard, get hungry, and go get a chicken sandwich. You pick the order you're going to do it in. Also on North Main Street, Dorito Brothers opened its state-of-the-art showroom this past year, and you might have noticed it. It's very different because the showroom is all the way up at the street edge, and you don't see just a sea of cars with the flags hanging over them like a used car lot. Cook's Collision also recently opened a new site, and that's what's on the lower right corner, and I've never seen an auto body shop have a look or feel like that. So all of this is definitely making North Main Street look better, and it's improving the whole northwest corner of Walnut Creek. Out on the other side of town at Ignacio and Oak Grove, Encina Grande has received approval for a small expansion and a major facelift to this decades-old shopping center. And the plan includes moving the Walgreens, which is currently at the center of the shopping center, to the far eastern end right next to Oak Grove, so that the Walgreens can have a drive-through, drive-up pharmacy window, and it'll be the first of that type in Walnut Creek. And we also know that we have new owners of the Rossmore Shopping Center, and they have indicated that they have plans to upgrade that center as well in the next few years, but nothing has been submitted. We haven't seen any plans. You've also probably heard that Safeway, which owns the 25 acres of land across from Encina Grande, has been working with the city and the community on a specific plan for the redevelopment of the site. Now this property, which is at the eastern edge of the Shadelands Business Park, is also at a major gateway to Walnut Creek, because this is where Ignacio comes over the hill into Walnut Creek from Clayton and Concord. A 12-member community advisory committee spent last year working on developing specific guidelines for how that property would develop, and those, I think there were 11 sets of guidelines, and those guidelines encompassed everything from how traffic would work around the property, as well as what it should look like, what type of businesses should be in there, other types of services that should be in there, the amount of open space that's required. Then based on those guidelines, the city's now developing a specific plan for this 25-acre site, and that plan will go through a full environmental review. Now, also based on those guidelines and the input of the community, Safeway has developed its own proposal for the site, and it is currently showing that proposal to members of the community and across the community. This website that I have listed up here, safeway@orchards.com, is where you can go check out what their vision is for the site, and it does include a larger, more modern Safeway. You can check that out, and this coming Tuesday evening from 6 to 8 p.m. at their Shadelands, at the Safeway offices in the Shadelands, they will be having a community meeting just to gather additional input. And then, again, this is being done in parallel with the development of the specific plan. These will eventually merge because they all have to be consistent with each other. But Walnut Creek isn't just about retail in terms of its economics. In fact, only 14% of our jobs are in the retail sector, and then only another 8% are in food, lodging, entertainment, recreation. In fact, just about 60% of the jobs in Walnut Creek are in education, finance, insurance, management, science, and healthcare. In fact, the healthcare sector by itself is the largest, anchored by our, anchored by John Muir Hospital, which was opened in the 1960s. Of recent news, John Muir has just announced a partnership with Tenet Healthcare, a for-profit hospital company, to own and operate San Ramon Regional Medical Center, which is down in San Ramon. And this will help strengthen John Muir's position in the healthcare sector in this region. And Children's Hospital, which has a satellite campus in the Shadelands Business Park, has just announced an affiliation with UCSF Medical Center. The UC Board of Regents approved it just about 2 weeks ago. This further strengthens the healthcare sector in Walnut Creek. Children's has made major investments in its facility in the Shadelands Business Park, and it also plans to bring a children's sports medicine facility to that campus. Speaking of the Shadelands, we've kind of touched on it a few times. It's a major focus of our city's economic development efforts. The 240-acre business park was first built in the 1970s, but it's been struggling in recent years to compete with major business parks such as Bishop Ranch and San Ramon, or with the mid-rise offices that are more modern in Concord. In fact, it had a vacancy rate of about 24% recently, and that will probably rise when the Contra Costa Times, which has a large facility in the Shadelands, does close that facility. So given all that, we are encouraged, and we do believe that the Shadelands has real opportunities to attract innovators and entrepreneurs, to generate high-value jobs and actually complement what we are doing downtown and our neighborhood retail centers, not compete with them. And a couple of examples of good things that are happening out there. Quick Mount PV, which is owned by the Wentworths, Claudia and Stuart, who are Walnut Creek residents, produces fixtures for the solar industry, and they relocated their business to the Shadelands Business Park last year. Employers in Shadelands have invested more than $30 million in improving their facilities in the last 4 years, and that includes the Department of Energy's Joint Genome Institute. And of course, any planning we do for the Safeway 25 acres will also complement and be intended to ensure that the Shadelands has a strong future. Key to a good local economy is a good transportation system. And of course, for all of us as residents, a good transportation system is very important as well. And we continue as a city to invest significantly in infrastructure, roadway, sidewalk, improvements and maintenance. Our current 2-year capital budget encompasses $5.5 million for roadway upgrades, and that's in addition to about $8 million in just maintenance that we do for all of our facilities, including street sweeping, etc. Now, thanks to a $2.2 million grant, we have just finished upgrading the signal timing system on Ignacio Valley Road, and now those signals from the freeway all the way to Oak Grove will adapt automatically and in real time to what's going on with traffic, 24/7, 7 days a week, which allows us to move traffic more efficiently through that major regional road. Now, I mentioned earlier, but for pedestrians and bicyclists, we've been investing in our trail system, like this crossing of the Iron Horse Trail at Mount Diablo. And we closed a significant sidewalk gap downtown this past summer on Newell Avenue. Think of it near Pacific Bay Coffee Company. That was a major pedestrian route for Kaiser employees to get to work and Kaiser visitors to get to Kaiser Hospital, but there was no sidewalk there. They were having to cut through the little parking lot. So we actually took out 4 or 5 street spaces, parking spaces, and we put the sidewalk in. And the funding for that came in part from the development that is going in at the corner of Newell and Main Street. And we also significantly improved pedestrian and commute safety at Buena Vista and Parkside Drive this past summer by putting in new sidewalks at that corner. That's a major route for children walking to Buena Vista Elementary School, as well as for local neighborhood residents who are trying to get to the BART station. We also continue to work at a regional level with other cities and the county on regional transportation improvements. I want to mention the free route trolley again. That is actually a bus in the county connection bus system. We don't operate the buses, but we help to fund the fare box so that it is free. A couple of things: the free ride trolley is the most used bus in the county connection system. It has more than 900 riders per day. That includes workers going to their places of employment, residents going back and forth to BART, and visitors. And County Connection has received a federal grant which will allow it to replace those diesel-powered buses with electric-powered vehicles, which will reduce which will save fuel, obviously, reduce fumes, and those electric-powered vehicles are much quieter on our streets. The fourth bore of the Caldecott Tunnel will actually open before the end of 2013. Now, the purpose of the fourth bore is to create 2 lanes of traffic in each direction consistently. So no more closing and switching out the traffic commute pattern, which will make the commute actually more consistent and predictable for all of us, whichever direction we're going. And I want to remind all of you that this has been funded, about 30% of the project has been funded with Measure J county transportation sales tax monies, which we first approved in 1989 and we reapproved in 2004. So thanks to all of you for helping us get major projects done. And I will also mention that this is East County. By the end of 2015, the widening of Highway 4 from Loveridge Road to State Route 160, which is right around Oakley, will be completed. What it's doing is widening that route from 4 lanes, 2 on each side, to 8 lanes, 4 on each side. Now, why is this important to us? Hopefully that will keep East County commuters on Highway 4 and make it faster for them to stay on Highway 4 than to come over Kirker Pass and onto Ignacio Valley Road or Treat. And part of that is also funded with those Measure J sales tax transportation dollars. Housing is also a key ingredient for a strong local economy. And I will say that after a number of very stagnant years, we are seeing a number of multifamily projects in construction or planning in the community. And this housing is centered in the downtown core area. And I believe that offers a number of benefits to all of us. First of all, it preserves the character of our single-family neighborhoods. We're not going to see apartments right next to a single-family home out in the Ignacio Valley or in South Walnut Creek. It also encourages, because it's downtown, it facilitates residents being able to walk, ride a bike, or use transit. And it minimizes the amount of new traffic that we would see on any of our major roads, such as Ignacio Valley Road, because it's downtown. It will also energize the downtown business environment with new residents. And finally, it provides housing opportunities that are typically more affordable than our single-family homes for new residents. And those new residents include young professionals, the new age of urban family. Think of a young couple with 1 or 2 small children, and also those of us empty nesters who finally decide to give up our single-family home, but we still want to stay at Walnut Creek and we want to downsize. So some updates. I bet very few tears were shed in November when this 10-story office building at New Orleans South Main Street finally came down. The old office building is being replaced with 3 floors of condominium units above ground floor retail, and all the parking is underground for the project. And again, this development did entail some investment in changing the way some of the signals worked, as well as some investment into some pedestrian improvements and traffic improvements in that specific area. You may have noticed some demolition work going on Civic Drive north of Ignacio Valley Road at the former site of Long's headquarters buildings. That is now been demolished and the site has been cleared, and it's making a way for the Brio apartments. Now that developer also has been required to make, or will be required to make, some improvements to Civic Drive. One of which is they are going to lengthen the left turn lane pocket that will take you from South Civic left onto eastbound Ignacio. So by expanding that pocket, it improves traffic flow, because you know what happens when a left turn pocket is over full. You can't move in the next lane over. This developer is also being required to put in a signalized mid-block crossing right about the north end of the project that will allow the Iron Horse Trail to connect with the project, which will be good for school children going to Walnut Creek Intermediate, as well as people walking to BART. At North Main and Ignacio Valley Road, you may remember that we used to have North Main Motor Lodge, and now it's been gone a couple of years. But what we're going to see is the construction of the North Main apartments should begin this summer, and that's only a block from BART, so there's a good opportunity to walk to BART from there. And around the corner from the DMV on Arroyo, this old building, I think it was a technology school in the Contra Costa Community College system, is going to become an apartment complex. Now the biggest project, and we've been working on it for about 8 years, will be the proposed Walnut Creek Transit Village at the BART station downtown. And we did give the green light to this project after 8 years of discussions and reviews and input this past fall. And the plan encompasses 596 apartments at the site, a replacement garage for the commuters. The apartments will have their own parking. We're replacing all of the lost commuter parking lot with a parking garage, and a new 15-bay bus terminal. Now there's still a long ways to go on this project, but the good thing to note, just keep this in mind, that the developer will be required to build the parking garage for commuters before they can do anything else. The city continues to be committed to facilitating affordable workforce housing, and by that I mean housing that can be affordable for the school teachers in our community and the healthcare workers and the office workers and those employees who would like to live here because they work here and they love our community as well. And we're very proud of some of our recent affordable projects that we have not built, but we have helped facilitate the building of these. Villa Vasconcelos on Geary Road, and Montego 2, which is senior housing across from John Muir Hospital, and then also Akalani's Court, which is up on Trinity Avenue, right around the corner here. And we were also delighted in October to participate in the groundbreaking for the Habitat for Humanity project called Pleasant Creek Homes. It is bringing 10 units to Walnut Creek in the Habitat project, and this is being built just on the other side of the freeway from the BART station, so right near the two entrances to 680 and 24 freeway on remnant Caltrans property and another parcel. It is the first project from Habitat Humanity in the community, but we hope it's not the last. I think after hearing me for the last few minutes talk about housing, it would probably be fairly obvious to you that the new housing in Walnut Creek is going to be primarily vertical and primarily downtown. But that means it's close to transit and trails and the freeways, and it's close to shopping and dining and the entertainment amenities, and it's away from more traditional single-family neighborhoods. But recognizing that that is what's going to happen in the future, we have begun the process to set a vision for how the West Downtown will evolve for the next 20 years. And when we say the West Downtown, we're talking about a significant area that stretches from the BART station all the way down to Olympic Boulevard and stretches from California Boulevard west to the freeway. And this is an area that comprises about a third of it is housing, mostly high-density apartments and some condominiums. About a third of it is business property, which is really on California Boulevard, on West Mount Diablo Boulevard, some on Oakland, and then think about the CVS drugstore site is also in this area. And about a third of it is community facilities, the BART station and 3 major churches. And of course, also in here is the small neighborhood, the Almond Shoey neighborhood. We've formed a community advisory committee of 12 members who represent residences, businesses, and those civic groups, the churches. And the committee's job over the next 18 months to 2 years is to really explore ideas for what would happen over the next 20 years and to really set our vision for what we want to happen and set a plan in place that can then be the framework, the blueprint for what every property owner would be asked to do in the future. And we really want to focus on how will downtown housing evolve in this area over the next 20 years, because many of the apartment buildings in these neighborhoods are as old as this 1960s, 1970s that I talked about previously. How will the business environment evolve? How can we make pedestrian and bicycling easier? How can we make it easier to use transit? And just as importantly, how can we protect that little Almond Shoey neighborhood that is somewhat surrounded by all of it? As I'm sure you know, we've had some difficult economic and fiscal times the last few years. But I want to say that even in the most difficult of times, one of the things that keeps us strong as a community is the dedication of our community volunteers. And just a couple of factoids. In 2011 alone, 2,300 volunteers helped us on city programs, just city programs. And their effort reflected 119,000 hours of volunteer time. And so for all of you who are participating in that and helping your community, thank you very, very much. In 2011, we sponsored our first ever Walnut Creek Community Service Day, and more than 1,000 community members came out to participate that day on 42 projects. Then last year in 2012, we came back again and we topped our numbers. We had 45 projects. We had 1,200 volunteers who gave just that day 5,000 hours to a range of projects from our schools to our libraries to our open spaces and gardens and to various community service organizations. And we also collected more than 4,000 pounds of food for the needy. So if you would like to participate and you love Community Service Day, mark your calendars. Community Service Day 2013 will be Saturday, September 28th. In addition to Community Service Day, this year we're putting the spotlight back on the community with a mayor-led initiative called Second Saturday Spotlight. And on the second Saturday of each month, I'm inviting the community to join me as we explore some of the things that make Walnut Creek so great. So over the next few months, we're going to visit, next month we're going to visit the Corporation Yard, which is where the city houses the trucks and crews that we roll to take care of the streets and the parks and the parking meters. And then in April, the Walnut Creek Open Space Foundation is going to give us a walk in the open space, but specifically to talk about the projects that they work on. They generate about 550 hours of volunteer time each year working on habitat restoration projects. In May, we're going to take a historic tour of downtown with the Walnut Creek Historical Society. During the summer, in July, we're going to come back to the Lesher Center, but this time we're going to go behind that curtain and we're going to see what it takes to put on a show. We're going to go backstage at the police department, and we're going to even get a tour of the animal hospital at the Lindsay Wildlife Museum. So pick up one of these cards in the lobby, which has almost all of the dates on it for what we're going to do. There's a couple we're still working on. And the only thing that we do ask is that you pre-register, but most of you did today, so that we're sure that we have enough tour guides for all of the people that want to come out. Well, I've talked about parks, and that's green. And I've talked about our environment, and that's green. I do have to get to the fiscal issues. That's the other green, and it's the green that really is at the top of our priorities. I am happy to report that our 2012-2014 budget is balanced at roughly $135.5 million for the 2 years. In addition, the city still has no general fund debt, and we have $9.9 million in reserves for catastrophic and fiscal emergencies. But we did not achieve this easily. In fact, this 2-year budget, which we adopted last June and covers 2012 to 14, followed 4 previous years of budget cutting in order to balance the budget, in which we had to cut $50 million over those 6 years of budgets. And we did this in some very painful ways. We eliminated services. We changed the way we deliver services. We reduced staff. In fact, we are 18% fewer staff than we had at the start of this. We negotiated changes to our employee contracts. We increased some fees. We added some revenue sources, and we certainly increased the use of volunteers. And what a balanced budget also doesn't tell you for the future is that our tax revenues today, even with Neiman Marcus, are still below what they were in our pre-recession levels. Our operating costs continue to rise faster than our revenues, primarily because of external factors such as healthcare costs, pension costs, fuel costs, utility costs. We have a significant funding gap for our 10-year capital and IT technology needs. I mentioned earlier the extra costs to keep our libraries open. When that special tax measure runs out, it's about $1 million a year to serve what this community has come to expect. In addition, both the federal government and the state government continue to have the power to adopt regulations and require us to do things and not give us any money to do it. We affectionately call those unfunded mandates, and those unfunded mandates last year alone cost all of us $11 million in this community. And then last year, as you may have heard, the state took away redevelopment. What that meant in Walnut Creek was it took away a consistent source of funds to help support and facilitate things like the Habitat for Humanity project and other affordable housing. So with the loss of those funds, we still have a perception in Sacramento that we're supposed to do it, but we don't have the money to do it. So I'm assuming that it would not be surprising for you to know that this is a major focus of the City Council and that we will be working very extensively on these issues over the next 2 years. 2 years ago, we had a 14-member Blue Ribbon Task Force on Fiscal Health that worked on those issues for us and gave us, after 9 months and thousands of hours of their work, they gave us a series of 38 recommendations in a 250-page report, which they wrote themselves. We did not invest city staff time to do it. And in fact, a couple of the members, I see them in the audience here today, Dan Walden and Bob Pickett, Jim Pizzalia's here as well. And Luella Haskew was on the Blue Ribbon Task Force, and Karen Majors. If I missed any of the other 9 of you, I apologize. A lot of what they produced is very interesting and very important to us, and we'll be looking at those issues over the coming months. And if you want to learn more about how money intersects with all the services we all love, I ask you to pick up a copy of this book. It's out in the lobby. It's called, we call it the Walnut Creek Budget Story. It did come in the nutshell last summer, but sometimes you forget to read things when they come in the mail. Pick one up today. I read it a lot because it tells me, wow, we love this, but this is what it costs, or this is how we deliver it. So these are things important to know. The other thing I think that's important is, and what you can do besides reading our budget story, is to stay connected. These are big issues that we're facing. They're challenging issues, and we know you want us to solve them, but we do so with your help as well. So there are a lot of ways you can stay connected with us. You can come and participate at public meetings. If you can't come to a meeting, well, you can tune into Walnut Creek TV. It comes into every home in Walnut Creek, and you can get it on Comcast or Astound or AT&T Uverse. And you can not only see the City Council meetings live and in person, you can also see our commission meetings as well. You should log on to the internet to our website for updates, and while you're there, sign up to get notices of public meetings, because then you'll get them automatically in emails. And you should also get social. And what I mean is, don't get friendly. I mean, follow us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, follow us on YouTube. And if you're interested in police-oriented issues, you also might want to sign up for nixle.com. And just in case you can't remember everything I just said, pick up one of these cards out in the lobby, because it gives you all the guidance of what you need to do to stay connected. In closing, I want to philosophize for a moment. Walnut Creek is a great community. And it's because it was a great community in the past. And it's because of the vision that was developed by those who came before us. They had a vision for our downtown. They had a vision for how arts would come together in this community, and how our parks would work, and how our open spaces. And they even had a vision for transportation and where we'd live and how that would all integrate. And in 2014, we have a true opportunity to celebrate both the past and our vision for the future when Walnut Creek celebrates its centennial. Plans are underway for a year-long celebration that will culminate in October 2014, and we're looking forward to this opportunity to once again bring our community together in a way that we can celebrate what we've accomplished and work hard on our present issues and set a vision that makes us all want to stay here for the future. And with that, I will thank you for the opportunity to spend time with you today, and to thank you for being involved and caring about our community. And with Gail's help, we'll now take questions. I didn't see anything moving around, so let's see if we can pick up these question cards. feel like every time I breathe, you can hear my...
There might be some on this side, volunteers.
Everybody runs for the door.
Does anybody have any on that side? Okay, so our handy volunteers will go to that side too.
So I hope they're not too tough.
And Luella, will you do me a favor? We absolutely have to be out of here by 10:30 because a new show is coming in, so because I don't wear a watch. But I do wear reading glasses.
So we'll start by saying, because we do have to be out of here at 10:30, we will be stopping the question period before then if we run out of questions, or exactly at 10:30, but I am happy to answer questions in the lobby or give you my card and get an answer for you if I don't have time to answer it today, or if it is necessary to get some additional information for you.
Okay, so my particular favorites. Why is the pedestrian crossing between P.F. Chang and Il Fornaio not synced to the traffic light? People cross randomly, backing up the traffic on the road. This is our traffic engineer here, Samin Tamuri.
Do you feel
you want
like
some backup here?
Well, do you feel like you can answer it, Shamin? Because I mean,
go ahead.
This is Samin from our traffic engineering.
Hi, yes. We have been faced with these questions, I mean, with many questions on this, similar to this in the past, and we had several studies done to signalize that crosswalk. But the study showed that it will cause problem with traffic queue on Med Diablo. So
if we in fact time it with the signal?
Even if we time it with the signal, there will be a lot of congestion as a result of signalizing it. So the best is to keep the two lights, one at Main and one at Broadway on Med Diablo, synchronized. Our studies and observations show that a lot of motorists are aware of this mid-block crosswalk that is so close to both signalized intersections, and they slow down and yield to pedestrians. So the studies recommended that we should keep it as is. We have looked at this before.
Well, thank you, Samin.
You're welcome.
And I'm sure she'd be happy to answer that question in more detail afterward.
Thank you. So speaking about traffic,
Okay.
what are you going to do about all the additional traffic that will come with the housing that is coming to the downtown?
Okay. And that's a question, we get that question a lot. So let's first start with every project, no matter where it's located in Walnut Creek, goes through a traffic analysis. And the traffic analysis not only considers how much traffic will it actually generate, but when at the time of day it will most likely occur, because business traffic of an office building has different hours than residential parking. So all of that is taken into consideration, as well as where the turn lanes will be, where the driveways will be, et cetera. All of that is analyzed and considered as a part of the project process. And the developer is required to mitigate all of the traffic issues, to minimize it to the very best possibility. In addition, the developer of every project pays an extra fee to invest in broader traffic impact issues in the community. So they not only have to take care of the ones right at the project or in the basic vicinity, they have to invest money into a traffic impact fee, and those fees are used to pay for things that will improve further away from the project what's going on. So we do all of that. Now, I also wanted to say that when you look at what's proposed in terms of downtown housing, The intent there is, one of the primary objectives is that there will be less traffic impacting all of us in our neighborhoods if the new residents in fact move into downtown, because there's less, it reduces their need to drive a car all the time. All of us probably have to get into a car, unless we love to ride a bike. We have to get into a car probably to drive to the grocery store because it's just a little too far away to get the parcels home. And all of us get in our car probably to go to the freeway. And all of us get in our car probably even to go to BART. But the residents who live in the downtown area won't have to do that. So that reduces the number of times per day they have to get in a car. In addition, if they do need to get in a car to go onto the freeway, they only have to drive a block and a half. They don't have to come all the way from Oak Grove and add their car trips into the mingle of the things that we all don't like now. So that really is the broader strategy as we look at these projects. The last thing I will say is someone has said to me a couple of times, well, why don't you just make them go someplace else? I wish I could, I mean, I guess. Someone did suggest Kansas in one conversation. We then had a conversation of paving over agricultural land. But I want you to also think about if all of the new development continued to go into East Contra Costa County, Oakley, Antioch, the new lanes on Highway 4 wouldn't support it. They would continue to be on Ignacio Valley Road and clogging and getting in our way as we're trying to get where we want to go. And from a macro issue, what kind of life is it if all of us spend 2 hours a day in our cars going to and from work? So those are my perspectives on that.
Okay. So segueing from traffic to parking, we have a question about our off-street parking downtown in our garages, and the question is, has enough signage been placed throughout the city directing visitors to the garages because the city seems to have adequate off-street parking?
Well, that's a really great question. Remember that slide that was up there about the wayfinding? That's one of the most important things that will go on those signs, is where to find those public parking garages, because it is really true. We have lots of parking downtown. We've done parking inventories, and one of the members of our downtown parking task force is actually in the back there. Wave your hand, Monica. And we have lots of inventory, but a lot of that inventory is in garages, whether it's public garages or private garages. So really what we want to do is make it convenient and easy for people to find those parking spaces, so that those parking spaces on the street where you only need to go in for 10 minutes are available for you more often.
Okay, great.
So look for the wayfinding signage.
And with the downtown trolley, has there been any way or consideration of partnering with BART to market the trolley so that when people come downtown on BART, they're encouraged to visit longer, take the trolley, stay downtown and shop?
That's a really good idea, and I'm going to ask Gail Murray about that. I know BART was also going through its own wayfinding signage project. So what you're really talking about is signage, to me, at the BART station, which is not what is not city signage, but they have their own wayfinding program they've been working on. Gail Murray is a former Walnut Creek mayor, and she lives here in Walnut Creek still, and she is our elected representative on the BART board. Let me ask her about that.
Okay. Going on to pensions, how is the city going to manage funding the public pensions?
It is one of the challenges that we face. So let me give you, I don't want to become Dan Bornstein here. Well, maybe I do. He has a kind of fun job to write editorials for the Contra Costa Times. So the public pension system is a very complicated system, but one of the good things that we have done with our employees over the last 3 years is we have negotiated new contracts, and in those contracts are all of our employees, if they are not currently paying their full share toward the retirement system, they will be by the end of the current contracts. So when you see an employee, thank them on all of our behalves, because they are helping with the challenge. Now, one of the things that we do as a city is we fund currently everything we're required to fund toward the pension system. The challenge is that CalPERS, the state pension system, has been giving us a bit of a, I'm looking at the Blue Ribbon Task Force members in the front row. They have been overestimating the ability of their funds to generate the return on investment it should. So it's, they are basically saying right now that they expect a 7.5% return on investment consistently over time. How many of you have a 7.5% return on investment over the last 10 years? Not me. So as a result, every few years they have to tell us, wow, our estimates weren't working quite right, and so you now owe us in back money. You need to pay catch up. And so what we have is an unfunded liability that's a catch-up liability for what they were not estimating conservatively enough. One of the things we did 2 years ago is we lowered in our long-term financial plan. We lowered our assumption on how the pension funding will go to help us kind of accelerate the money that we're setting aside for that. But at the bottom line is that we have probably $100 to $150 million unfunded pension liability that we are legally required to pay at some point, that we need to set aside money for, which is part of the funding gap that we have, is we need to start fiscally setting aside money for that, as well as just paving the roads, etc. I do also want to say the one good thing that we have in Walnut Creek, or one of the other good things, we have no general fund debt, so we're not paying toward debt at this time. Our employees do not have a public employee retiree medical. So when you read in the paper about the county or other communities like Stockton and Vallejo, one of the secondary issues they have going on is that they have a retirement medical system also, which is experiencing the same problem. So it's a doubling down of the problem effectively. But we do not have that in Walnut Creek. Our employees go on Medicare when they turn 65. So the last thing I will say is I do, again, appreciate what our employees have helped us do over the last few years. And the governor's public employee pension reform bill from last September will help us over the long term, because it did change the rates and the speed of the system and how it works. But in the short term, we have that more immediate issue that we need to keep an eye on.
You know, we have so many good questions, and I'm getting the signal like this from Luella, which means that we do need to wrap it up. She said 10:25. We have time for one more? Okay. Then we will do one, and I'm going to go to a totally different topic, recreation-based. So what is the city going to do about the swimming pools?
As I mentioned during the presentation, both the Larkey Swim Center and the Clark Swim Center at Heather Farm were actually built in the late 1960s and came online between 1969 and 1972. So they are coming on to 45 years old, each of them, and they're aging, they're wearing out. And because they are pools, all of the mechanical issues are underneath the concrete. And because they're pools, you can't tweak them to make them deeper, to make them meet current safety standards, and you can't tweak anything in a pool system. In addition, because they are mechanical and they involve water and chemicals, they wear out faster. Any of you have a home swimming pool, I'm sure you know that. We did a needs assessment about 3 years ago to determine what we would need in the future over the next 45 to 50 years. And we have identified what the need is, and we worked with the community of swimmers and aquatics users on that. But what it identifies is to replace those pools, all of them, and replace them for the future. So to meet the depth standards, the water system standards, et cetera, and to create efficient operations is probably a $25 million project. And unfortunately, we don't have $25 million. And we don't have it in our dedicated park funds. That's just a really, really big number. So if any of you have an extra $1 million in your pocket, let me know. Happy to take it. I'm sure we could set up a nonprofit way you could fund it so you could deduct it from your tax return and only have one conversation with the IRS. But I am confident that eventually we will be able to come together as a community on this issue, particularly with the aquatics users, and figure out the best solution. But I'm happy to hear any ideas you all may have as well.
Okay, well, thank you very much. I've been asked, yes?